us took that vaccine. And a lot of us that said we wasn't gonna take it, end up taking it. I'm just saying. But I'm just gonna let you know, and I ain't trying to scare nobody. But if you experience some type of complications with your health that just unexplainable, doctor can't even tell you why it occurred, I'm just gonna let you know. A lot of those reasons it's because of the vaccine. See? That's why they made us sign that piece of paper, so they can't get sued. Ain't nothing we can do about it if anything happened to us. There's a lot of people that I know right now dealing with some things because of the vaccine. Heart failure, diabetes, high blood pressure, stillbirth, and even shingles, which is the herpes. I'm just saying, I ain't trying to spread no rumors out there. This is something that I just need to let y'all know. If you're experiencing things with your health and you don't understand where it's coming from, 9 out of 10, that's where it came from. They ain't gonna tell you that, but it could possibly be where it came from. I'm just saying, sometimes they just use people as a guinea pig to see how it's gonna do. If y'all can recall, way before the pandemic happened, it was already talking about the United States was overpopulated. Talking about that some people need to die because there's just too many people in the world. I'm just saying. So I don't put nothing past it. I do believe that it's possible. It's highly possible because it just ain't right. If you're wondering why you're feeling sluggish, you're wondering why you're fatigued and headaches all the time, just having health issues out of nowhere, it goes all back to the doggone vaccine. Because at the end of the day, it takes more than 6 months to a year to come up with a vaccine to vaccinate people to keep them from getting sick. It takes longer than that. I'm just saying.
If you haven't already, make sure you download the Rumble app. It's free, simple to use, and the best way to stay connected to the content you want. Once you got it, search for my channel, hit follow. That way you get a notification every time we go live. No missing shows, no extra steps. You can grab it right now. Use the link in the description or the pinned live chat. Download it to your phone and you're ready to go. And if you prefer watching on the big screen, Rumble is available in all major streaming devices and smart TVs. Just search for Rumble, follow the channel, and be part of the action.
You look at the actual studies and the adverse events that were documented within those studies. It's now been released through the Pfizer papers and other means. You think somewhere they ought to put some information in there. So the point I want to make is I think an awful lot of folks are saying that there was not informed consent. I would argue they violated the inviolable principle of informed consent with this COVID injection. I just think that's indisputable. I'll start with you, Dr. McCulloch. Do you want to weigh in on that?
I've presented at the FDA advisory meetings. I've advised companies for decades on this, so I know the regulatory science very well. When a product definitely results in death, and there are thousands of peer-reviewed papers on this, Governor, the COVID vaccines in some people sadly result in death. Some on the very first day they take the shot. That must be a black box warning on the product immediately. I just checked the package inserts for the currently available products, the ones that Senator Blumenthal wants to pursue. Sounds like Governor wants to still pursue these. Our FDA still wants them to be administered. They still don't have the word death in the package insert. As of today, they don't. And so Americans are not fairly informed.
Do you have any doubt in your mind that the COVID injection caused some deaths? I mean, what do you think of the, 38,607 right now listed on VAERS? What do you think the real number is? And do you have any science to back up your opinion?
The best data are autopsies. So in the largest autopsy series published to date, I know because I'm the senior author, of all the deaths we examined, and we re-reviewed them. We had an adjudication committee. We had ways of arbitration deciding on did the vaccine cause death. The answer is, of these cases that came in for autopsy after vaccination, 73.9% of individuals, it was determined that the vaccine was the cause of death. First author is Holscher and colleagues. He's sitting right behind me.
And again, by FDA's own laws, that should be included on that package insert, correct?
Immediately in 2021, Dr. Carol Tassetta, working with the Daily Cloud, wrote Peter's Marks in the summer of 2023 and said, "Where's the black box warning? Where is it?" No word from Marks.
Dr. Vaughn, you want to weigh in on the informed consent?
Well, the other thing is, I think emergency use authorization, actually by definition, when you fill out the documents for the patient, if they read it, it actually says that they should make sure that they are under no compulsion to get this product. And that is what's so confusing, because even though the product was mandated in the summer, at the end of the summer of 2021, the product on the shelves was still the EUA product. And in that sense, for somebody to be mandated to something that they also have to sign to say that they weren't mandated to do it is kind of hard to do legally.
By the way, that's the subject of a couple oversight letters in terms of the whole full authorization type thing. Dr. Thorpe, quickly?
Yes, on informed consent, there was completely the opposite in pregnant women. HHS appears to have captured the American College of Obstetricians and Gynecologists, and my research team, including Maggie Thorpe, JD, have proven that with the Freedom of Information Act.
For a few million dollars, correct?
Many $1 million. They captured ACOG. In December of 2020, everybody at ACOG and the other organizations, we're not going to push this vaccine in pregnant women. In the span of a pregnancy, 40 weeks, September 27th, 2021, you will push the vaccine. You will push it in pregnant women and follow all the HHS criteria. And if you don't, we will destroy you and your professional career will take your license away and we will decertify you. That went out to 60,000 OBGYN doctors. So
we probably should have expanded the title of this: corruption of science, federal health agencies, what would you call those? Professional organizations?
These are the three organizations that essentially govern obstetrical care, not just in the United States of America, but the whole world.
By the way, I wanted to ask you, to what extent are the medical journals funded by various conflicting organizations, pharmaceutical companies? I've heard Chinese interests. I mean, are you aware of that? You were talking about the article written by the editors of the New England Journal of Medicine.
Yes, I'm aware of the study by Wen and colleagues, David Daniel Wen, that was just published October 10th of 2024, documenting that 1.06 billion with a B dollars went to the reviewers of the medical journals, of probably the most influential medical journals: New England Journal of Medicine, Lancet, BMJ.
That's coming out of the pharmaceutical industry.
That's correct.
So Dr. Walscott, as a vaccine injured, do you believe you received informed consent?
Absolutely not. Absolutely not. I mean, informed consent, and as a physician, I believe strongly in informed consent. Informed consent requires true and transparent data. And we can sit here and hear the mantra or the typical narrative of safe, effective, saved millions of lives, but in reality, that's not true. Okay? We can talk about efficacy if we want. Again, certainly the vaccines don't prevent infection, don't prevent transmission. I think I could present to you, and refer to a lot about safety data, particularly with regards to all the adverse events that I think there's more than ample evidence that the federal regulatory agencies ignored. A lot of these systems, VAERS, vSafe, I call deliberately deficient by design. So do I think I got informed consent? No. Do I think anyone here in the United States in the last 4 years have gotten informed consent in considering getting a COVID vaccination? Emphatically, no.
So by the way, my theory, and this is a theory, I don't have the proof, it's hard to prove these things, but my guess is the reason they were so concerned about issuing a warning on the Han is, again, they didn't want any vaccine hesitancy on this, right? And also, if they alerted doctors to the fact that if you have a patient with myocarditis, you might want to ask them, did you just get a vaccine recently? And otherwise, the doctor's looking at myocarditis, trying to figure out how to treat it, right? Not trying to figure out the cause, because myocarditis does happen. You know, Dr. McCullough, quickly.
Myocarditis was so common that in the UK and Australia, they actually did issue guidelines to doctors on how to recognize it and when to get MRIs. That's how big a problem vaccine myocarditis is.
Also, one of the points I made is they did not warn, they didn't advise doctors to advise against strenuous physical activity, right? They pulled that off of the one warning that they gave. Talk about how dangerous that is. The mild. Talk about how often myocarditis is mild versus serious.
Before the pandemic, there was myocarditis. Can be caused by Coxsackie virus. The most dangerous type is called giant cell myocarditis. It was very rare. I had seen 2 cases in my career. One was fatal, but it's in our guidelines. Anyone who develops myocarditis cannot undergo strenuous physical activity. They have to be taken out of sports. It's mandatory because the surge of adrenaline when there's inflammation in the heart triggers a cardiac arrest. So you can imagine how reckless it was for the sports teams to mandate vaccines on athletes, provide no provision of safety, and then have them go out in the field.
So why would these federal health officials, when they're discussing putting that warning, that advisory for physicians as they did their kind of weak need warning on myocarditis, what does that tell you? Why would they pull that out?
It was reckless not to provide prudent guidance on reducing the risk of cardiac arrest when a patient has vaccine myocarditis. Whether it's acute myocarditis that we clinically recognize, by the way, 90% are young men, 90% are hospitalized. Tracy Hogan, others at UCSD show that, multiple studies, but there's a larger group of subclinical myocarditis. These are patients with heart palpitations, blood pressure swings, atypical chest pain. Listen, this is water under the bridge. Fortunately, very few people are taking COVID shots anymore, but these patients still have symptoms. A recent report by Koyosmu in Journal of the American College of Cardiology has shown cardiac arrest in people years after the vaccines, and they have found vaccine microscars in the heart.
And we can keep going down this. I did want to go to Mr. Siri, who does a really good job of describing V-Safe. Because you actually had to sue. You should have had to sue, by the way, right? First of all, the health agencies who set up this V-Safe, voluntary online report on specifically the COVID-19 injection safety surveillance, right?
Yeah, V-Safe.
10 million people signed up voluntarily. You would think the federal health agencies would make that information just available anyway. But at a minimum, when you FOIA'd it, Freedom of Information Act, you think they would just hand it over to you, right? They didn't do that, did they? You had to sue them. How long did it take you to actually get that V-Safe data? And then why don't you describe what you've got and why they were probably trying to hide it?
Sure, it took over 2 years, and you'd also think with a name like V-Safe, it would have been designed to actually assess safety with regards to the COVID-19 vaccine. So V-Safe is a program that the CDC rolled out in December of 2020, along with the first rollout of the first COVID-19 vaccines. And as you just pointed out, Senator, the point was to ask people to sign up. 10 million Americans signed up, almost all of them in the first 6 months. This was when there were no mandates. These were folks who were enthusiastic about getting the vaccine. These were the folks who felt it was their civic duty. In fact, that's part of what they checked of why they signed up for V-Safe. And so over the next 2 years, the CDC kept putting out study after study after study, dozens of them, in which it said the COVID vaccine is safe. When you look at those studies, what is it relying upon? One of the primary data sets it's relying upon is the V-Safe data, okay? And so on behalf of our client ICANN, we, as you pointed out, submitted a Freedom of Information Act to the CDC, and we said, hey, this data you're collecting in V-Safe is almost all de-identified, because most of it's checked the box. Please provide it. The American public pays for it. You're public servants. American public should have access to it, should be able to do what scientific inquiry is supposed to do, which is replication.
By the way,
Yes.
quickly, What did they ask and what didn't they ask on the VSafe?
Yeah.
I mean,
So,
talk how grossly inadequate it was.
yeah. So, I mean, I understand this hearing's about, did our public health agencies do things that were improper? Did they have C-enter? Did they purposefully do things improper? And when you look at how VSafe was designed, I think you'll see that. So VSafe had check the box most of what VSafe collected was via check the box options. Then it had some free text field. There were two categories of check the box options. The first category were symptoms. So you could check the box for various symptoms, right? And the
Like, maybe give us an example.
fever, local, little pain.
The standard minor things, right?
Right. And so those symptoms, the VSafe system only asked you for the first 7 days after injection. And as Dr. Shimabukuro even said in an email that we obtained via FOIA, those are the expected reactions. It's what they call almost immunogenicity. It shows the vaccine is working. And so the symptoms that they picked were totally useless for assessing the safety of the COVID-19 vaccines. And in fact, when you look at the studies that the CDC published, people were reporting those symptoms at 40, 50, 60% of them. Yeah, they reported, pain in the arm, of course, but they were viewed as normal to have a little chill, have a little fevers. And so that part of VSafe was totally useless for assessing safety. So that wasn't useful. What was left? The only other thing that was checked the box was if you sought medical care, if you missed school or work, or if you were unable to perform normal daily activities, and if you checked that you missed, you needed medical care, it then asked you, were you hospitalized, emergency room, urgent care, or telehealth? Okay, so that was the data they were collecting. So presumably, VSafe was going to assess safety by looking at people who sought medical care after vaccination, because everything else they collected on check the box was, at least on the symptoms, was not useful. Now, before I go on to tell you what the healthcare seeking data showed, I just want to go back to the symptoms that the CDC chose. One of the things that we obtained was a copy of the very first version of the design documents for creating VSafe. And when you go to the last page of that design document, it's in my 66-page submission. Everything I'm saying is in the 66-page position with citations and support. What you will see is they had a table. It was called Adverse Events of Special Interest, Pre-Specified Medical Conditions. And on that list, it had myocarditis, it had pericarditis, it had all of the issues that we now see and people have reported with regards to COVID-19 vaccine. It was in their design document before they launched VSafe, but not a single one of those conditions ended up as a check the box, or at least the symptoms of those conditions. You could have put in at least chest pain if you didn't want to use the word myocarditis or pericarditis, but they didn't do that. To me, that is the best evidence, one of the best pieces of evidence out there, that our federal health authorities knowingly, consciously chose to design this system. It was not to determine safety. It was in order to assure their a priori assumption of safety. At the end of the day, CDC is a government agency. In my experience, they don't conduct themselves based on what folks would call science or medicine. They are a policy organization. They set their policy, and then everything that they do has to conform with that policy, and their policy is safe and effective.
Okay, so again, voluntary system, 10 million people signed up.
Yes.
They've tracked all this data, inadequate, check the box information. And what they should have been just making available online, like quite honestly, like VAERS. I mean, VAERS available. You can see it. Okay?
They should have.
They should have made that available as well. They didn't. And so you had to sue. When did you sue them?
Sued them. It would have been a few months after the rollout of the COVID-19 vaccine.
Okay, so early in 2021.
It took us 2 lawsuits actually, because we in order to make them take contradictory positions, and only so we sued them 2 different ways, and only when they had no choice, they finally released the data after a year and a half.
And you first filed a FOIA request.
Yes.
And they should have just boom, they should have handed it over to you.
If
right?
they want,
because they obviously were collecting this data, had to be kind of centralized. Wouldn't have been that big a task, I wouldn't think. Here's what the data shows.
It would have taken them seconds.
They should have, by law, just turned it over to you.
They should have.
And they didn't. So you had to go to court, and it took you 2 years.
It took it.
Okay. Then so now drum roll.
Yes.
What did the VSafe data show once you finally extracted it by a lawsuit using the courts?
Yes.
What did they show you about how safe the
here's what
injection was?
Here's what it showed. In contrast to the dozens of studies that the CDC relied upon to say that COVID-19 vaccines were safe using VSafe data, where they only reported the first week of what people reported after the injection seek medical care, even though they know that injuries from COVID vaccine can happen well after the first week. But they only reported the first week to make the number look low. And even though they designed the system to collect medical seeking behavior for 6 weeks after getting the vaccine and 3 more instances after that, when we got the data, it showed that 7.7% of VSafe users reported needing medical care after the COVID-19 vaccine. And 75% of those reported they were hospitalized, emergency room, or urgent care. And on average, they sought medical care 2 to 3 times each. All of this data is publicly available.